Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Screen share, good. All right, good deal. Again, good morning. Thanks for joining us today and carving out some time in your busy schedules. Today's webinar, as we have more and more folks cycling in to the room here. Julie, you can still see my screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Okay. So today we're going to talk about a fun topic. Uh, Relationships are always important to everybody in every aspect of our life. And today, Julia is going to discuss with us managing vendor relationships and how that relates to purchasing, and possibly, if we can throw it in there, maybe a little bit of discussion on expediting as well. But as always, our amazing host and content bringer, Julia Nikishna, is here with us. For those of you who don't know Julia, and have never spoken with her or sought her assistance with New Age Financial Consulting, uh, her and her team offer bookkeeping and accounting support, including CFO services for large and small businesses. They specialize in unique and complex accounting needs for interior design firms and showrooms. They also have comprehensive procurement services for designers and showrooms as well. I every time I like go into this slide, Julia, I'm just going to say for the record, I feel like that scene in Ace Ventura whenever he goes to do a long explanation and he sucks in a bunch of air and like tries to do it
Mhm.
in one breath. That's exactly what I feel like.
You could shorten the bullet points or just take them out altogether.
I could, but that's all very, very important information. But I digress. One last house cleaning item before we get started here. If you have any questions at all throughout the webinar, please, by all means, click I believe it's a question mark box now in your Zoom toolbar. This will pop up a window that you can drop your question in, and Julia and possibly myself, if I feel so intelligent enough to do so, will answer your questions as we go along. And with that being said, Julia, I'm going to hand it over to you. You are set for takeoff.
Perfect. Hi, good morning, good afternoon. How are you? Okay, I'm going to share. Just please confirm we're looking at the right screen and not my back and forth Slack with Hannah about studio pay. Okay, here we are.
There we are.
Perfect. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. As Anthony mentioned, wherever your Zoom toolbar is, you will have a Q&A box. Feel free to post any questions in there while we're in a particular screen on the screen share. A lot of times they're just easier to answer that way. So for today, we'll be talking a lot about vendors, I would say vendor relationships and purchasing. So trying to cover as much helpful information regarding all of those. So how do you manage your vendors? How are you managing your vendor spend, and what types of key information are you looking for? So if we go to projects and we go to all addresses, let's just start off with looking at a vendor ID to make sure that we're using the vendor ID to its fullest capability. So we'll look at 1,000 bulbs as an example. So let's go to the edit pencil button. So hopefully most of this is just standard information. Remember, your contact screen up here is actually immensely helpful. And it is a newer feature, I would say a couple years old in Studio. So you could now add as many contacts as you'd like to each one of your vendors. And if you fill out the email options down here below, when you're sending purchase orders out of Studio or when you're sending proposals out of Studio to clients, the fields will update for you regarding your email, to field. So take the time to set this up correctly out of the gate. We do encourage everyone to put as much information into here as possible. Additionally, every single one of your vendor IDs has a website user ID and password box. So all of your trade account logins, this is a great tool to add for the whole firm to be able to see and access. At the same time, if the Williams and Sonoma trade login changes, you're able to update the password in real time, and then everyone on the team knows that. Under codes, the term box up here is a tricky, it's a sneaky and tricky box. So actually, let's just go to add new. Oops, let's see if it'll let me. Oh, we have to open it up under settings. Okay. So the term box comes with, I believe, pro forma, net 30, open account, and maybe one other one that are preset in Studio. But terms can be a great tool for the team to understand the ideal payment terms for a vendor. So that would be American Express. Are they a domestic wire? Are they an international wire? How does this vendor like to be paid? If you're able to fill in this the first time that you're setting up a vendor, it just makes ordering easier for the whole team. What winds up being a bit sneaky about this term box, so let's see if I could find it in settings. So vendor terms. Do we see vendor terms? Terms. So terms and open link. So vendor terms have a deposit percentage. And what can be confusing is this deposit percentage will override this purchase deposit percentage within your vendor ID. So if you have Williams and Sonoma set up as 100%, but then this pro forma term box is filled out up here, and pro forma here is set to 50, this 50% will override this 100% on the item screen. So just be very, very mindful. When we're working through terms with clients, I'll actually set the deposit percentage to be 0. I don't want it to override anything. I don't want it to be filled in. I want this percentage to override the term box. And so we'll use this as a communication tool. Is the vendor international, and is it an international wire? Do they only take Visa, MasterCard because they don't take American Express? Do they take American Express, but there's a fee? So what's their preferred method of payment? And that way, whoever's doing your ordering at the office, as new vendors are getting set up by the design team, someone knows that they could look directly under vendor codes instead of either asking the designer or going back and asking the vendor the same question. So that this is a great tool. So your purchase deposit, remember in Studio, everything flows from your company settings here into your client ID and your vendor ID, and then from your client ID and vendor ID into your items. So your items override everything and anything. Because even though Williams and Sonoma, and actually let's go to that one. 1,000 bulbs is probably not the most used. So Williams and Sonoma. So you would be filling in the website user ID and password under codes. Your purchase deposit should be set at 100. You shouldn't ever be paying tax because you should be a trade account, but let's set this to 100 just in case. And even though you may order a long lead time item, on the item level, you would then default this to 50%. So just something to keep in mind. Remember, images and attachments, again, also a newer-ish feature on the vendor side. Really, really great tool for W9's test, and actually certificates of insurance. So you could upload files directly to the vendor ID. It works the same way for the client ID as well. But that way, again, the designers know, the principal knows, and anyone on the accounting and purchasing knows that the W9 was already requested. It lives here within the vendor. Everyone could look at it for tax time. And then under codes, if you're not sure how to fill out these boxes necessarily, if you've done and uploaded the W9, somebody on the accounting side could then use that information to fill out your boxes here. Certificate of insurances are down here. Again, also just a great way to manage the certificates of insurance that you're gaining for your laborers. This does become tricky in the big cities because you can have Joe, the contractor, working in multiple buildings. Each building will require their own certificate of insurance. So yes, you could upload them here, and that, of course, is still helpful. But in terms of watching when things expire, you may really need more than one field here, but at least it gives you something. We usually see that as a problem, for example, in New York City. even though this is less about purchasing, this expense account is great to use for your vendors for operating expenses. So for example, if your Ubers, you could memorize your expense account here to always go to travel. So you would save it here, and then anytime you're importing or you're posting into your general ledger, your expense account will populate. So that's actually a really great feature. We get the question a lot of, well, what do we do if it's a manufacturer? How do we track? Well, actually, what do we do if it's a showroom? And how do we track different showrooms? Let's see if Coco to the trade is set up. How do we track different showrooms and the different lines within the showroom? So I think that, you know, multiple ways to do it. I really like to understand how much we're spending with each line within a showroom that we're buying from, if we're buying from a showroom. And so before we actually talk about how to set up the address ID, this is a great report to quickly and easily review your spend annually. And so I went to the cash disbursements by vendor summary report, and I'm going to look at last year. Now, granted, I don't know how much we have in the test database for last year. I feel like the one time I looked and there was like nothing. Okay, there's a decent amount. So if we PDF, so this will very quickly tell me how much did I spend with Kravet as an example, how much did I spend with Main Street Upholstery. But if Kravet was Coco to the trade, and really from Coco to the trade, I'm buying multiple lines, this information won't be the most helpful. I would then need to go and pull a report within that vendor to understand what I spent within each particular, or within the showroom to see what I spent with each particular vendor. The reason I look at this is to understand if we're meeting or if we would be eligible for minimums with the vendor directly. And are we, even if we're working, for example, with Four Hands, should we really go to Four Hands and say, you know what, we're actually within the next purchasing limit, I need you to increase my discount? Or is this like a leveraging tool for you to say, okay, well, I've actually, you know, I've spent X, you required me to spend Y, I'd like to go, you know, do you have a greater tier, you know, or do you not? So if you wind up just setting up, and we could actually do this, so if you wind up just setting up Coco to the trade as your one vendor, this information will be much harder to drill into and won't be as impactful. But if you set up Coco Hickory, just as an example, Coco Hickory is your vendor. So you may wind up having more than one address ID that starts with Coco. So it could be Coco Hickory Chair. It could be Coco Kravet. And you want this to be an indicator. Oh, it's like not, I didn't realize this had a pop-up. So I want to be able to, for the team and for myself to remember that I order Hickory Chair from Coco, but I also want to be able to look at any point in time to say, oh my gosh, I've spent so much with Hickory Chair, I'm going to start buying from Hickory Chair directly. And a lot of the times, as all of us know, the showrooms operate differently and the vendors operate differently. Sometimes they want the check made out to Hickory Chair and mailed to the showroom. Sometimes they want the payment made out to Coco to the trade and still mailed to Coco to the trade. So you would then use your fields down here to explain that to whoever's either purchasing, your purchasing person, or the designer. So Hickory Chair, for example, is going to be mailed. They want it mailed. They want the check payable to Hickory Chair, but they want the location to still be, and Coco to the trade is in Florida, Main Street, Miami, sure, both Miami, Florida. So they want it mailed to the showroom, which is located in Florida, but they want the check made out to Hickory Chair. Something else to think of, oh, and let's change this actually to vendor. Something else under codes, you're under vendor codes specifically, you could also set your order to and your pay deposit to. So this applies to showrooms and manufacturers. Who do you want the check made out to? How do you want that distinguished anytime that either you're working on the accounting side or somebody else is working on the accounting side? So I'm going to, actually I'm going to save this, country, United States. Okay, so let's say, well, let's actually, I was gonna say, well, what if we have, oh, automated, yes, yes, yes. It's funny, I keep forgetting, Anthony. I need to spend some time on this one. I'm thinking Cocoa. So we're gonna have Cocoa to the trade, Cocoa trade, and then we're gonna have Cocoa Hickory as part of our example. Cocoa trade. She definitely is not at 123 South Main Street, but why not? And she's not in Miami, but she's close. Florida, United States. I just set her up quickly. Oh, still vendor. Um, so we're buying Cocoa Hickory. The check though gets made out to Cocoa to the trade, and I'm going to put the final payment also Cocoa to the trade. So this is just a way to manage and remember, right, all of the different payees within a showroom, within a manufacturer. So yes, this helps this helps with vendor misalignment, PO under the showroom, charged by the vendor, and organizes the data. Yes, so like I agree with that. So when who owns who, right? Like well, Thibaut, and I never know how to say them, they're standalone. Kravit owns a lot of different Kravit only Jofa, right? I feel like there can be a lot of confusion with sometimes who are you buying from, who's charging on the credit card, who gets a check. So if you do the part of setting these up correctly, it could really help you. It could really help you in the long run. And then remember, this type of report, I mean, I'm not running this every week or every month even, or every quarter, but I am checking in on it, especially come year end, and especially to have a conversation. Oh, you know what, the other time we're looking at this is it actually, if I have minimums with vendors, if I know that my minimum with Hickory Chair is X, and my minimum with Kravit is Y, this is an easy way to say, oh, okay, I've hit this minimum, I've hit my minimum for Hickory Chair, but you know what, I actually haven't hit my minimum for Kravit. So instead of buying the furniture from Hickory Chair, I'm going to place this order with Kravit, obviously, as long as it's aligned aesthetically. So great report to heart and remember here. Okay, so I think enough. Let me know if you have questions about vendors, but those are just some helpful hints on the vendor side. Oh, the other thing that that I'm a stickler for, I don't like these address IDs. So remember, your address ID is internal, and that a lot of times is very helps with some clarity for people. So the vendor ID, this is a great example, doesn't need to be the name of the actual business name of the company. The address ID, the vendor ID, and then on the flip side, the client ID, this is internal. This could be this, could be this could be this. It's your internal tool of managing then this box. So I think the big, like our experience is the bigger firms tend to have some rules and regulations about what can be used in the address ID, right? Don't use don't use and have a character limit potentially. Do you want to go with 5 characters, 8 characters, 10 characters? The address ID is what typically populates, unless you override it, on any and all of your project worksheets. So your project worksheets, when this column is really long, it skews the height and the width of the columns, and it could become really clunky or bulky to look at. So if you're in a good system with vendor IDs and the same with client IDs, it makes your reporting easier. Also, if you have some, again, rules and regulations about how to enter vendors, hopefully, so like, let's look at Pottery Barn as a good example. Oh, we're only in here once. Hopefully you don't have the designers entering one vendor 12 different ways, right? And so we see that way too often. So PB Team, Pottery Barn, potterybarn.com, PB.com, right? Because somebody didn't take the time, they're assuming that it was entered a certain way, and somebody didn't search, and there's no parameter set about how they should be setting up vendor IDs moving forward. We do also get the question a lot of, well, should only one person be entering vendors? My answer to that is no. I don't think it's the right use of one person's time. I think it's a better use to teach everyone on a team how to properly use the vendor screen and how to make it robust and user-friendly. Okay, so now we could go into our item screen. So my test project in here always for Wednesdays is 19th Street. 19th Street is Mr. Tom Hanks. Actually, while we're talking about vendors and or purchasing, let's go to settings and go to my favorite, one of the top favorites, so color statuses. Studio has been educating us and letting us know about all the improvements that they're making. So color statuses have gotten a big refresh. Those of us that are older, like myself, red, yellow, green, right? The traffic colors were the big hit in desktop, and then we went to 8 colors, and then we went to 10 colors in WebWare 1.0. And now we're at a very robust 20 colors, which is a lot of colors. That was one of the most frequent support requests of adding more colors. It's a really popular and a really big deal. So I went to settings and then they renamed them because they used to be called priorities. And I went to color statuses and I right clicked, right? You could always right click and open up as many tabs at the top as you'd like. And I opened up my color statuses. Oh, Anthony, you have your own, and it is magenta.
Yeah, reflects my moods. It's out right there.
I should be black. I should be mourning. There isn't even a black. Strong brown.
Probably for that very purpose, so nobody goes
I know.
too far off the deep end.
Oh, so these are, I'm like, why are you at the top? You're alphabetical. So Anthony's first. So colors are colors are a communication tool. Colors should never replace your very lovely and what should be popular codes. So anything with having to do with procurement down here. Colors are not in replace of codes. Colors are in addition to codes. Colors are a way to manage your item, to manage vendors, purchase orders, proposals, and project management type items, right? So under color status, you're able to right click over here and name your colors. I don't want to rename it. We could put it Anthony plus Julia. That would make me laugh. So we renamed this right very quickly. It will then rename all of your magenta colors within your item screen. Something to keep in mind, which this was, if you remember, the colors used to be dots and they used to be this way, right? On your, before the item refresh page happened. And so now they're not, well, they used to be dots and boxes and they used to be from left to right. And now they're up and down. So they're from top to bottom. But if you are looking to have, so they're alphabetical, sorry. And then let's look at here. Actually, I just want to show you something. My color is here. The way they appear here at the moment, these cannot be reorganized. I do believe that is coming, Anthony. I don't know if you know that or can confirm. I believe that that's something on the list, that if somebody wanted red to be at the top, they would be able to, at some point, move red from down here to the top to up here.
I believe so. I'd have to
Yes.
double check with the dev team, but there's a bunch of stuff that's a bunch of like feature requests that they're working on at the moment.
So that has been a request, right? Because if you're using your statuses to manage your items, and if your first status is I don't know, not approved, not final, proposal light, I don't know, in queue, the pricing isn't final yet. So if you want that color to be first, you're not going to have the ability, at least at the moment, to make that, to call it purple and have purple be the first one on in this drop down here. So be very, if you're new to colors and you haven't already designated them, be mindful when you're naming them. That's the long answer to the point of the story.
I'm curious to know, Julia, I just thought of this as you were talking. Is it possible to like, would it make sense from a designer's perspective to have each color be have a number as well that represents like what position the workflow that would be in,
Well,
so they can technically always have whatever ones they want you know, at the top of the list, they can have 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6, you know, on down, and it'll do it numerically. Do we know if it'll do that?
So I believe the answer to that is it will, right? The number, so for example, if you number rooms in studio, right, it will, the 0, 1 will precede the alphabetical.
Hmm.
This is still a problem though for people who have used some of the colors. So if your red or if your magenta is step number 6, but at the moment magenta is step number 1, what do you do with all those existing magenta items designated to this color?
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you have a free color, right? Just because we've done this, you could move all of your magenta items to whatever, strong brown down here because that's not designated. Then rename magenta to how you want it to appear in the order. That just could be a lot of work depending on how many items, like how big a database is. So I think this goes back to, yes, I think it's a common development request. Well, what if I want this to be the first one? Because in how I've already designated my colors, this is first in my process. But that's a great suggestion. You want to try it? Why don't we try it? No, what the heck does no mean? So 01, no. Yep.
Yep. All right.
That's
That.
always my recommendation for room lists, right? Because people have a strong opinion about the room list being alphabetical, but they default alphabetically. So if you don't like that, which is totally fine, then you switch to numbering everything. So 01 dining room will always be before. I don't, what's before D, A, 01? I don't know. Oh, that's a really great question. You cannot have multiple colors on an item. So this goes back to your colors are a tool. They're not the end all be all. Your colors are supposed to represent where an item is in the status of the project management. So if you're new to colors or if you haven't potentially explored all of the, especially like the new colors that are here, the colors don't replace the codes because the colors aren't tied to a date, but the colors are a tool for parts of the project management process that doesn't necessarily have a date tied to it. So as an example, right, there's no purchase order approval, either date or box in here. So if you're a firm that has somebody, and it could be different people, but you have somebody approve a purchase order, you need a PO approval color. And then that's assigned across the board, obviously, to any item that the PO is approved. And then your purchasing person knows the PO has been looked at and it's been approved and they could go ahead and purchase. There's not an internal proposal approval button. And so, yes, you could use here, you can approve these, but if you're having clients approve these, then this becomes moot, right? You can't do it you can't have it be internal and external. And then also remember, you shouldn't be manually changing every single item for color statuses, right? You can bulk update, thankfully. So here, oh, no. So we could update all 3 no's with our 3 dots. And if you go to bulk update, you could change your priority color status here. You could also update codes 1 and 2. Codes 1 and 2 are a really old box. They come blank within the software, and they're really just yet another tool of managing the item and potentially using this field on a report or as a sorting tool. So like we see some common requests for item codes. Client inventory is one. So if we're trying to separate out client inventory from a project worksheet, this could be a really easy tool. You could also assign client inventory, obviously a color. So there's lots of ways to manage it. Let's, oh, item color. I'm going to make this. What happened to Anthony and Julia? Oh, so look, Anthony and Julia here still pop down into just into the templated color flow. And it's not alphabetical. So we're going to make that Anthony. And it updated. Your 3 dots also allow you to update dates. So again, no need to manually update the dates on an item by item level. You should be updating dates here in batches whether it be by PO or obviously, by multiple items, etc. There is a question, and I'm sorry, I'm not, I tried that, but it only reorders on that items products page. I'm not clear. I'm sorry if you could just expand. Not on the drop down in the items page, or maybe they updated that. So apologies, just not super clear. If you could provide a little bit more clarity. If you don't know, just while we're in the bulk updating phase, if you're updating and uploading vendor documentations to your items, so first of all, you should be, but if you're updating and uploading them individually, that is a giant waste of time, and everyone needs to be, let's see, oh, here we go, 2 items. Everyone needs to be bulk uploading vendor documentation to the order. And so if you click on the order, so I'm on order 200-544, and if you go to if you go to items, you have this blue button here that says choose file to attach to all items. This would be where you would attach all of the vendor backup associated with every single item on the PO, instead of opening up each item and attaching it individually. Much easier, much more streamlined. Let's go to save. Actually, then let's also view the item. So remember, you can change your description here. You could also hyperlink this to the order itself. So this goes back to, well, what's your order process? How are you ordering? How are you ordering efficiently? Let's say you've implemented the vendor IDs and the vendor contacts and the trade username and passwords, right? So all of that now lives in Studio. So that's fantastic. But now you're also going to transition to whenever a vendor needs an order, an actual purchase order, you're going to start sending it out of Studio. So your vendor documentation is here. This document it just copies out of the system. I think we've had requests of, well, can you rename, oh yes, can you rename this in bulk? So you cannot at the moment rename this description in bulk. This description, unfortunately, is still individual. So even if you're uploading in bulk and this description is important to you, you then have to go in and rename every single one of these. We get the question all the time, like, do you need to, do you not need to? I would say all a matter of preference, and it does depend on if you hyperlink to the vendor. So let's pretend we're going to do that, and let's pretend we've never done that before. They have no idea who this PO is even to. But I uploaded these 4 pieces of vendor documents to the item, and I'm actually going to send this directly from Studio. So I'm going to rename one to my credit card authorization form, and I'm going to rename one to, I don't know, well, one drawings, and I don't know, final quote. Okay, and then I hyperlinked them. So hyperlinking, I had to click visible to vendor. Are you clicking visible to client? I would say most likely not, right? Most of the contracts, or 99% of client contracts, we do not disclose our vendors. Very, very, very few scenarios, especially in the political spectrum, where potentially you would. Visible to vendor is just a really fantastic field, an option. And so if you've ever been audited, this is your go-to for an audit, because you could hyperlink all of your vendor documentation to the PO. What PO am I on? 200-544. And then you could send that entire batch of POs for whatever period of time you're in, directly to whoever's auditing you, and all of the vendor backup will be there. So under 200-544, forget about my items. They obviously look a little bit messy, but this order now, if I go to share PDF, and if I click on attachments here, I'm under order format 1. Oh, maybe these items don't have any pictures. Okay. But if you notice, so if you take off attachments, my hyperlinks aren't there. But if you toggle them on, my hyperlinks are there. And so now I uploaded random things, but if I didn't, I'm able to send my credit card authorization form directly to my vendor. I'm able to send my drawing sets directly to my vendor, my quotes, etc. So storage is free and covered by Studio. So you can upload it as much and as many images and then attachments to the item as possible. Anytime that someone has a question regarding the receipts, their go-to should be Studio. Everyone should be going into Studio to say, okay, what was charged? When was it charged? When was the quote received? Who emailed it? Who ordered, who ordered it, etc. If you're emailing also out of Studio, so let me see if we could see one with history. If you're emailing out of Studio, oh, here's one. Okay. I emailed this out of Studio. I emailed it to Baker. Who knows where it actually went? But if you click on this order and you go to history, you're not only able to see when it was emailed and who emailed it. So Robert emailed this to the sales@test team. You're also able to see if it was opened. Oh, so here it was opened and it was so processed, delivered, and opened. And this is true for both the orders, proposals, and invoices. But again, only if you're doing it within Studio Designer. So let's actually just go to this order. And if you go to share, I'm assuming there's no hyperlinks, but pretend that there were. Oh, it has two. And if you go to next, this is the screen that is tied to your contacts. So if for Baker, if my contacts were filled out for Baker with the rep and the second rep and the third rep, they would all live here in this screen. You could, this message here, dear vendor, please confirm receipt. This is also preset. This is preset in your, let's actually do it here. In your settings under my company, here are your email messages. So you can have a proposal message, a quote, a specification, right? If you're sending one of those out of Studio, an order, and an invoice. Oh, and a client portal. So I like a nice preset message, but I actually really love the history to be able to see, especially with vendors, we all know that they could be tricky to see, well, when did I send it? Who sent it? Did they open it? And when? Now, something to keep in mind is that this email date, like, so if I go to email this today, this email date will override and it will only show you today's date. This is not a real email address. Send, let's see. Oh, two. Can I put this here? Okay. We're gonna email myself. Okay, send email. And so back in this screen, so this will only show you the last email date. And if you wanted to have more history, you have to then go into this history tab. So that's also been a common request. Will that ever appear in the PO, the proposal, or the invoice screen? I think it is a great idea. I don't know how high up it is on a development list, but just know that the history tab here is immensely helpful. So anyone that we're converting into Studio, or anyone, for example, coming to us, whether it be for Studio training, I'm not necessarily even encouraging. I'm really demanding, and I do say, and I try to have the office really rally around the idea that putting all of your vendor documentation into Studio is immensely helpful for everyone in the long run. It keeps communication clear. It keeps everybody on the same page. It also it helps accounting and the designers talk to one another, and then accounting and or project management, if you have that role, somebody in the purchasing role, split out a little bit. So we talked about hyperlinking, we talked about sending orders, and then additionally sending proposals and invoices. So if you go to your item and you go to codes, you have quite a lot of expediting codes, right? And there are a lot of fields here. There's a lot of dates. The date fields, actually, let's look at them this way. So no, your dates can be overwhelming. They can be a lot to manage. The best way to manage it is to be consistent and probably fill in some of them. That would be a good place to start. But to commit as a firm, what fields are most important to you and what fields will everyone use uniformly? So if we go into this particular item and we go to codes, I say pick 3 to 4, and I mean that, right? Because you're most likely not going to fill out every single one, but you are more likely to fill out 3 to 4. So order acknowledged is a really big one. Usually one of these two, estimated ship, estimated delivered, and then received and delivered, I would say, are the most popular. Received and delivered are different. Is usually at the receiver. Delivered is final at the client's home. So if you don't have a receiver, if you're not working with one, then you wouldn't be utilizing this field at all, and everything would go to delivered. This warehouse receipt and expediting, I'm not going to remember offhand, but one of them is newer. So one of them was existing, and then maybe warehousing receipt is the newer one, and expediting was the original one. So if your receiver sends you a number for every single one of your items received, your warehouse receipt number is a great tool to tie your items into your receiving report from your receiver. So once you're at a point of utilizing these codes consistently, you should then have 3 separate expediting reports that you're using for yourself and the firm. One would be an internal one. You would have a client-facing expediting report to let the client know of any updates regarding delays, installs, etc. And then you could even have an expediting report for your receiver. And this is the double check with your receiver to make sure every single item A is tagged. You could add an image to that report. We'll actually look at that briefly before we sign off. You could add their warehouse receipt number. You could upload their warehouse receipt number to here. That is commitment. I would say, right, that takes a lot of time. That takes a lot of work. We definitely see this number filled out very, very often. And it depends on how robust your receiver is. Your receiver may use their own software, they may use their own tracker, but if they don't, you sending them your own receiving report will also be helpful. If you notice, when I was in my item screen here, I changed my view. I change my view very often. I love the item list view personally. I use it all the time, and I love that you can sort by these columns. So if I want to show every item that hasn't been invoiced at the top, I toggle all of my invoiced items to the bottom. And then if I'm in this item list view and I have a certain toggle on a column, and then I convert it back to my item detail, the view coming from my item list with all of my items with an invoice at the bottom, it actually stays the same. So you could do that. Oh, I think it's thinking for your dates, which are your expediting dates. So somebody mentions that their company has been using the warehouse receipt number as a space for our receiving inspection team to confirm they have received the item with their initials. Oh, that's also another really great idea. Is bulk update planned for the warehouse receipt box? Oh, really, really good question. Maybe Anthony knows. Anthony, do you know by chance?
Is bulk update plan for the box warehouse receipt? You know what, that I don't know. But I can definitely
Yeah, that's a really good support ticket, Marta,
yeah,
by the way. Like if you want to email with feature request, that's a great, I bet a lot of other firms would benefit from that.
I will save you the time and I'll put the feature request.
Oh. I then like it. I like to tie it back to the original idea creator.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I'll put that in. That's a great suggestion. Thank you for that.
that's a really great suggestion. I don't remember where my thoughts were. Oh, so I changed it to my date view. I like the date view. I mean, this isn't not going to replace a report, but still really, really helpful to know, oh shoot, did I miss this? Did I not, did I forget this, etc. Before we wrap up, let's just look at some expediting reports. So I'm asked all the time, and I'm sure there's even lots of webinars on it, which is your favorite expediting report? I would tell you to create your own. I would tell you to go into reports, go to all, which is what I just did, and type in expediting. And when you do that, you'll get, well, these are custom, but let's say you'll get 12 that are not custom, right? And that come with Studio, they come with the software, and they're really fantastic, right? So they each potentially serve a slightly different purpose. Look at them, open up each one, literally open up each one. So filter it by whatever, 19th Street. Take out this filter and look to see what you like or what you don't like about each report. And from there, make a decision as to what fields you want to commit to up here, which fields are important to you and which fields are not. And I would actually recommend that you start out with an internal expediting report before you even begin to build out a client-facing one or build out one for your receiver. So I'm just trying to think if there's any that I like, but I do. I think we have a custom one everywhere we go. So somebody wants to see proposal, somebody doesn't want to see proposal, somebody, right, wants to see the invoice number. I like to sometimes even add a client balance into an expediting report because it's a nice reminder of the client balance should be clean before you're doing any of your deliveries. I don't need to see the proposal number, for example, right? Everything should be on a proposal before it even has a date in here. And then from this point, your filters are your friends. Let's see, what do we have filled out? So it's hard when nothing is filled out. Received, delivered, estimated ship. And these are dates of 2022. Oh, received, delivered, let's see. So let's go to estimated ship. Oh, estimated ship is in here. So my install is coming up, or we're in 2024, my install is coming up. That's really funny. Hi, Lily. And I want to see estimated ship that is, I don't know, let's see what's not blank. How many items are there? Probably 2. 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I want to see where the team is doing a good job. I want to see a date range from this to this, right? So a from and a to. Show me my installs on Friday. Shoot, show me any field that the received column is blank, because that means, oh my gosh, right? It hasn't been received at the receiver. So, but the date filters are only as good as your data. I mean, which we say all the time, Anthony, I'm sure you say that all the time, right? Everything in Studio is only as good as your data input. So if you can commit to 3 to 4 fields I'm going to say at the top, but within your code section, then commit to using the same expediting report across the entire company. Your filters here will become immensely helpful, right? And they'll be really useful. You'll have some actionable takeaways. Oh my gosh, why don't we have an order acknowledged? Oh, you know what? That's a common one. We have a lot of firms who want to replace order acknowledged with a color instead of a date. I'm just going to personally, I'm not aligned with that. I think order acknowledged should be a date. But that's a common question. I think that kind of wraps it up. I know we only have a few minutes. Let me know if you have any questions. Vendors, expediting, purchasing, some of the helpful hints we used. I really like this warehouse receipt bulk update idea. I'm going to submit my own support ticket, Anthony.
All right, cool.
So
I'll be on the lookout for it.
well, so that they tally them, right? So like the more tickets there are for the same issue, I'll just keep emailing every week.
Yeah, so we ultimately will attach all the requests to the same ticket that we hand over to our developers. And it's not always based on the volume of requests. It really has to do with like resources. We'll do some R&D and stuff like that surrounding the things that are recommended and see the viability and like what it would actually take to implement something like that. So that helps us plan out our timeline too. But yeah, it can depend on the request, but I think adding something
Yeah, that's great.
that would be, yeah, those 3 dots just about everywhere in Studio, those 3 dots hide a lot of cool features that I don't think a lot of folks know are available to them. So if you ever see those 3 little dots, click on
Well,
that and see what's behind there.
I'm really scared to sort of admit this. Like these 3 dots, I don't know when I discovered these, but it was years.
Oh, the more filters one? Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, yeah.
In-time billing? I was like, how come this wasn't an email? I mean, maybe it was, and I don't know how many years ago, but when I did finally find this, I was like, no way.
Well, you know what we've started to do is we've started to do more in-app messaging, which I'm sure everybody has seen an uptick in like little pop-up windows when there's something new.
Yeah,
And we're trying to make sure we don't oversaturate anybody, of course, and make it cumbersome to like have to click all these windows and close them and stuff like that. But we do want to provide more insight where new changes are being implemented and give
yeah,
or like a heads up, when things are about to change. I think at least in my time here with Studio, we've learned a lot of lessons about timing,
yeah.
execution, and so we want to make sure that we're always keeping that in mind and how things will affect users both positively and negatively whenever we do them, whatever we add, things like that. But yeah, we're trying to increase the awareness of new features that we think that our designers will find really useful.
Ellen, to your question, yes, that would be through the attachment link. So yes, you could attach literally anything and anything. You could attach millwork drawings. I mean, you could attach anything that you want to attach under the images and attachment section on the item level. And then Isabel, regarding items that are being worked on, I mean, I think per Anthony's point, it is a bit of a revolving door, right? Sometimes, I mean, from my experience, and Anthony, I mean, you would know more obviously, but development tickets get tagged along with other development tickets, especially if it just makes sense from a timing perspective or if somebody's working within that module. So
Yeah.
I mean, you're more than welcome to submit a question into support to see, if your request is being worked on. But I think sometimes that there's not a black and white answer to that.
Yeah, most of the time there's not, especially if it's not something that's already currently on the roadmap. We always, pass along this information and share it with the team more broadly. And from there, the process begins on, what kind of resources would this addition or change take? That accounts for both manpower, money, time, all that kind of stuff. The effect that it would have on the platform,
Yeah.
at large. A lot of stuff goes into that. So, it could be months, quarters, maybe on the roadmap for the following year. So it really depends on it. Really, we want to focus this year on improving what we have and making sure that, the amount of incidents are minimal. Yeah, like I said, just improving on what we have. So new features might not be so much this quarter or this year. But definitely always good if you have suggestions. Studio is built on community suggestions and feedback. That's how we get better. That's how we improve. And ultimately, you all reap the benefits of that with having a platform that's efficient, intuitive, and manages all of your functionality in your businesses. So that's what we're always striving for. Let's see here. I think we got one more
I think
question.
that's all of them.
What's the best way
We
to
did.
send a calm
We
feed?
answered Ellen's. It was a
Oh, we did.
follow.
Okay.
Yeah, we did.
Gotcha.
Yep.
All right, good deal. Well, then I will go ahead and wrap this up for everybody. Give you all some time back for your busy days. Again, thank you so much for joining us. As usual, Julia, thank you as well for sharing all of your knowledge and wisdom about this stuff. What I'm throwing up here on the screen for everybody. If you want to reach out to Julia, here's her email and her phone number and her website. So feel free to reach out to her if you have any questions or would like to employ her services. And then again, if you have any questions, feedback requests, or feature requests rather, or feedback that you want to submit to support, you can. We recommend always reaching out through our chat bot first because that's going to be the quickest way to get answers, which ultimately can lead you to a live agent if you need that. And if there's no one available, it'll actually create a case for you so we can follow up with you. So it's the easiest way to reach out. Otherwise, you can just email at help at studiodesigner.com, and that'll create a case for you as well. With that being said, I hope you all have a good rest of your week, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, Anthony. It was great to see you.
Always, always, always. You take care,
Thank you.
Julia.
All right,
Bye.
I'll talk to you soon. All right, bye.